Explore the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
The visitors are not our friends! They've come to rape our planet and kill us! They are not who they appear to be!
They're anywhere from 7 to 22 feet tall. They can weigh up to 1,800 pounds. They're reptilian. The longer, the ones that have stubby tails, if you see one that has no tail, he's of the warrior class, or the worker class. The longer the tail, the higher their rank. When you see one with long tails, with winged appendages, he's considered royalty. Whenever you see one, you ought to just run like hell. You shouldn't approach it, you shouldn't provoke it, just get the hell out of its way, just get out of its way, just run.
Tim, there's something curling around my feet, and it's trying to go up my legs. But I'm not going to let it get in the way of a good show, am I? No, sir. How are you out there in Jasper, Indiana? My old friend.
I'm doing well, Tim, and it sounds to me like your air mattress is leaking.
Well, I'm sure that's not the only thing that's leaking over here. But hey, I've had a busy week. Oh my goodness! Yes. I tell you, I am so exhausted that it will take a bunch of reptiles to keep me going. But we're going to have a great show tonight. I mean, you know, I was going to say I love reptiles, but. Actually, I have nothing against them, but Lynn will tell us why we should, I guess. But why don't you introduce our guest, and then we could all get into the fries, so to speak.
Yeah, well, sure, it'd be my pleasure, Tim. You know, I think that the whole idea of UFOs and their connection with possible extraterrestrials has always been controversial. Even, I mean, when you were dealing with, you know, like George Adamski and the Nordics, and going on to the you know, the little big-eyed gray abducting types of creatures. But I think nothing seems to be more controversial or interesting for a lot of people is the whole idea that we're being visited by a race that is basically reptilian or reptiles. Now, of course, you know, some people say that these are creatures that have been on the planet longer than we have, and others say that they are extraterrestrials. But that's why we have two fantastic guests tonight to enlighten us. We have Len Kasten, and Len, I have to tell you something, Len. You've been one of my favorite writers on in Atlantic Rising magazine over the years, and Len, he's been investigating UFOs and ET related research for over 30 years. He's a former member of NICAP and MUFON. And he's got several books.
Why is he a former member? Did they kick him out because he believes in reptilians?
Well, we'll have to ask him. You know,
NICAP doesn't exist anymore.
Well, actually, they do have a website. And I tried to email somebody to get him to come on the show, and of course, I never got a response. But right. There you go.
Well, Len's book tonight that we're going to be concentrating on is called Alien World Order, The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race. So, Len, great to have you with us. And also with us tonight is Erica Getch. And Erica, I have to admit that Erica has been a Facebook and Instagram friend of mine for quite a while. And I know that you, Tim, that she's been a Facebook friend of yours as well. And Erica has, she's got a book out called Beyond the Fear, The Alien Equation. And since she was a kid, she's had strange experiences that she, because she was around 5 years old when it first started, she really wasn't able to comprehend what was going on. And it wasn't until years later that she became an adult that things became a little bit more clear to her. And, she's had experiences with several so-called extraterrestrial races, including blue reptilians, which she says are actually benevolent towards humans. So it's going to be a fascinating show tonight.
Maybe they're just benevolent toward her.
Well, we'll have to ask her and find out now, won't we?
Well, I've had a kind of an interest in this subject for a while because, I've delved into the Shaver mystery, and Shaver, they have all these legends about beings that are living inside the Earth, and some of them are said to be reptilian in nature. In fact, several years ago, we did a book, Reality of the Serpent Race and the Subterranean Origin of UFOs, and kind of delved into this as much as we can, but we have the real experts on tonight. And I think I want to start out the conversation. Let's ask Lynn here, whose book has just come out. I think it just popped into on my desk here maybe 2 weeks ago. How did you first get, of all the topics we could discuss, what fascinated you or what drew you towards the reptilians?
Well, I have to say that David Icke had something to do with it, but David Icke just broke the ground for me. And then as I started to explore, I've always been, if you've read my first book, The Secret History of Extraterrestrials, in the introduction, I talked about the fact that we are being controlled. I've always felt that we are being controlled, we are being regimented by some external force. And
I agree with you there. I agree with you there.
It was very clear to me. It was very clear to me through money, through all various means, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But David Icke opened the door for me, and I began to do more research, and I began to see it. But what really tipped the balance was coming across the book by Robert Morningsky. Once I got my hands on Robert Morningsky's book, which is now almost impossible to get, it all came together, and I realized I had to do this. I had to do this expose, if you want to call it that. It's really not an expose because so many people are talking about it now already.
Well, now you blame, I would say, a lot of the negativity in the world, the evil that goes on around us on these reptilians. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of this?
Well, it's the reptilians were here before we were. We're actually the newcomers to this planet.
So we're sharing the planet with them.
We are sharing the planet, and I don't even refer to them as extraterrestrials. Mm-hmm. They really are intraterrestrials because we both share the same planet. We were the late arrivers. We came later. They lived here for 200,000 or 300,000 years on this planet without any humans at all here. But there were humans in the solar system. There were humans on Mars, and there were humans on Maldek at that time. But they were the first ones here on Earth. And I'm basing this on Stuart Sverdlow's research, and I think he's very accurate about this. I think he's had very many experiences at Montauk that gave him a lot of information, and so that's why I rely on Stuart largely for this particular subject.
Well, now, Len, were the reptilians supposedly? Are they indigenous to Earth entirely, or are they? Did they come here from someplace else very early on in our history?
They arrived here from the Draco star system about 1 million years ago, according to Sverdlow, and it all comes together. But they didn't come to a planet that had any inhabitants on it when they first got here. The reptilians had spaceships in the form of planets They were just exactly like the Death Star in Star Trek. So they crossed the galaxy inside a planet that we would call a Death Star, and they brought with them their own food source, which were the dinosaurs. And as their planet or their spaceship or their comet, whatever you want to call it, passed by Maldek, they destroyed Maldek with probably a weapon of some sort, or just going by the planet itself may have caused it to explode. But I think more likely it was a weapon that they've used before, particularly in their invasion of Lyra, which we can talk about later. Then as it passed by Mars, it stripped a lot of the atmosphere off of Mars, forcing the humans who were then living on the surface of Mars, they had to retreat underground. And finally, when they came to this planet, Earth, this was really a water planet. There was nothing here but water. And they basically terraformed this planet, according to Sverdlow and others. And when they did that, two continents emerged. The first one was Lemuria, the second one was Atlantis. And also, according to Sverdlow and according to others, they created the moon, which we know now is artificial. And they used the moon as a sort of a stepping stone to piecemeal inhabit Earth. Mm-hmm. And they became the first inhabitants on this planet.
Well, why the negative? Why are they so negative against the human race? I mean, why are they doing all these terrible things? In fact, you say in your book that they had some sort of a treaty that they made with Hitler.
Yeah, but to understand their antagonism towards the human race, we have to go back to Lyra, the star system Lyra. The reptilians and the humans had never met before. They'd never confronted each other before, but they've had spacefaring technology for thousands of years. They're way ahead of everybody else. And so they were exploring the galaxy, and they were conquering star systems and planets all over the galaxy. When they came to Lyra, which had human inhabitants, the first human inhabitants really in this galaxy, at first they made peace overtures, but then they retreated back and decided they were going to destroy the humans on Lyra. They slaughtered 50 million humans, and they destroyed 3 planets in the Lyra star system. So that was the first confrontation between humans and reptilians in this galaxy. And Alex Collier goes into that in great detail. Are you familiar with Alex's book, Defending Sacred Ground?
I haven't read it, but I do know him. He spoke a couple of times at our conferences we had out there in San Diego and Phoenix, Arizona.
Well, the antagonism that developed through that invasion caused the humans to spread throughout the galaxy, and they created like a human diaspora throughout the galaxy. And some of them came here and settled on Mars and Maldek. So they were really here.
Well, I think you should explain it to maybe the listeners who don't know. Isn't Maldek the planet that exploded that's now the asteroid belt?
Yes. But it was a very large planet, and the humans lived on Maldek and lived on Mars peacefully and even traded with each other. When the reptilians arrived, the first thing they did was destroy Maldek and slaughtered hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of the inhabitants of Maldek. Then they stripped the atmosphere off of Mars, reducing it to a very thin atmosphere, and then they terraformed this planet, Earth. They were here first, and that's why they consider this their planet.
Can't we all get along?
Yeah. Well, now, if they consider Earth their planet, how did humans manage to get such a strong foothold to begin with? I mean, if these guys are, able to, are as ferocious as they're supposed to be, able to kill millions on other planets, how did we, as this, wee little humans, how did we manage to get here and then populate so freely? One thing that we're good at.
After the invasion of Lyra, the humans that had spacefaring technology scattered all over the galaxy and created colonies on many different star systems, including the Pleiades. And they got together and formed what we call now the Federation. According to Alex, there were 110 different colonies all over the galaxy that formed the first Galactic Federation. And they developed on their own. They, of course, communicated with each other since they were all human. And they all developed very advanced technology, eventually spacefaring technology. So that when the reptilians arrived here, the Federation was provoked and decided they were going to confront them here on this planet and not let them have Earth because they didn't want them to have this solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they sent a very fierce race of humans from the Pleiades called the Atlans, Atlans, to settle here and confront the reptilians on this planet. And they had high technology too. They started the continent, they founded the continent of Atlantis. And the battles were incredible between the reptilians and the humans at that time. And the Atlans eventually had some very, very high-tech weaponry, electromagnetic pulse weapons that they fired on Lemuria that eventually caused the continent to sink beneath the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when the reptilians went underground. And it was after that that the Atlans were now free to build a golden civilization here on the surface of Earth. And that's where Atlantis originated. But meanwhile, the reptilians were underground. But the battles had not ended at that point.
Well, but how about now? We didn't quite get an answer about their cooperation with Hitler. I mean, how did that all come about?
Well, while of course the reptilians were masters at what we now know as hybridization, and they were not satisfied with living under the earth. And what they did, they started hybridizing the human population, and eventually they were able to actually sink Atlantis too. And so they existed under there, created literally an empire under the earth, created high-speed trains and incredible technology. They decided, I guess, in the late 40s that they were going to try and retake the surface through the fascist movement. And that's when they made their deal with Hitler. This was about 1934, I believe, shortly after Hitler came to power. And, of course, Hitler was delighted to make that deal. I think he thought that made him invulnerable, but it really didn't.
Now, where did they actually have a face-to-face meeting somewhere that you know about?
Yeah, Hitler talked about having met. He said I met the man of the future in one of his conversations with the mayor of.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of him. He said he scared me. I'm afraid of him. He was really talking about a reptilian, probably about a 10-foot reptilian, and scared the hell out of him.
Well, and, I would say that it. I would say that it would probably scare. It would probably scare me too. But I don't think Erica or our other guest tonight doesn't seem so afraid of them. I don't think they've had such a negative influence on her. But okay, so they made this allegiance with Hitler. Well, if they made this allegiance, then why did Hitler lose the war?
Because he thought he knew more than his generals. You know, they couldn't be sure of Hitler's characteristics, and Hitler was not going to be ruled by anybody. And he decided that he knew more than his generals, and he decided he was going to fight a battle on two fronts, which was crazy. He should have learned the lessons of Napoleon, but especially invading Russia with winter coming. So, you know, he was very, very fallible, and he was rather stupid in many ways. But he had ultimate power, and he did what he wanted to do.
Well, you know, there is the mystery of Hitler's army prior to the beginning of World War II. You know, what was it? The Treaty of Versailles. stated that Germany was not supposed to have any kind of standing army, or just very few, and yet when Hitler decided to chuck that aside, there really wasn't a lot of people that he could gather together. Yet in less than a year's time, he was able to come up with thousands of troops.
Exactly. I made that point in my first book. I came to the conclusion that they were a cloned army, that the reptilians had basically given him a 1 million-man cloned army.
Wow!
And that's why they had no conscience.
I hope they don't give the Koreans those million men army.
Well, the way they're goose stepping, it almost looks like they.
It does. It
does
indeed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scary. It's a scary thing to contemplate, because they had no conscience. They were really not human. They were cloned, literally robotic. And that's why they just carried out orders. They never questioned an order. They just did what they were told.
This is something totally out of science fiction. I mean, you couldn't come up with a better science fiction story than this. I mean, well, I guess maybe some of the science fiction stories have been influenced. I mean, do you think the TV series V, for example, was influenced by the reptilians, or somehow the people that put it together knew about this?
I think so. A lot of the Hollywood stuff is all people are getting information, all kinds of information. Stargate was an example of that, because we do have Stargates. There's so many. Even Star Wars. Now, I discussed Star Wars at length in my book, because Lucas knew the whole story, and he tried to portray it as best way he could. The troopers all had things over their face, so you couldn't really tell if they were human or not. And probably he was trying to portray the reptilians. And the Death Star, the whole concept of the Death Star, was an actual piece of reptilian technology that they've had for centuries. Those are their spaceships. They cross the galaxy in planet-sized spaceships, and they live in the interior. And so he knew that. And
well, how many? But are they responsible for most of the UFO sightings, or a good percentage of them?
I don't know the answer to that. I would say they are a good percentage of them, yes. But they have space technology under the Earth. They can come out anytime they want. They can travel to other stars. We cannot, because they keep us here under a blanket. So many of the UFOs that we see probably are reptilian origin. But then again, there are many other extraterrestrials visiting this planet.
Well, when we come back from our short intermission here, we're going to find out about who's visiting the Earth. And we're going to hear from Erica, who's going to tell us about her first-person experiences with some of the reptilians. And I think she takes a slightly different approach to this. She says that some of them are not really all that bad. So stay tuned. Don't go away, and we'll be right back with a fascinating show on reptilians.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
And welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz, and tonight we're talking about reptilians with Len Kasten and Erica Getch. And Tim, if the audience could hear our conversations in between the break, we really should, like some of these other programs, charge a little extra money to listen to Exploring the Bizarre After Dark.
And they want to charge you for an extra few minutes of conversation. We'll give them the real stuff.
That's right.
But I want to hear about blue reptilians, and I want to hear all about
You know what? I want to tell you guys, I want the people listening, if they only knew that I sent Leonard to his room. Trust me, you guys.
Duly admonished. I've been duly admonished.
He loved it.
Len was a naughty boy.
I was.
Well, it might pay off to be a naughty boy on the show.
That's right.
Because,
okay, well, Okay, go ahead.
I'm Mr. Creepo, so I tie right in with that. Erica, I don't know if you know that about me. I've made low budget horror movies for many years under Mr. Creepo banner.
Was Brad involved with you in that effort?
Brad Steiger?
Yeah, Brad Steiger. Was he involved with you with that?
No. No, he's a gentle soul who. Well, actually, many years ago, I was just speaking to Brad this evening. Actually, many years ago, he did a couple of novels. He's not known for writing novels, but he has written a couple, and we tried to turn them into movies. The books are just absolutely fantastic. I remember one is called The Hypnotist. And Strike Me Dead, I can't remember for the life of me what the other one is called. And he is a great fiction writer as well as a master of the writing about the paranormal. Probably one of the top writers in the field today. Next to myself and Nick Redfern, of course. Yes. But Erica, do tell us, Erica, about how this all began for you. How old were you when you learned about UFOs and reptilians and outer space and all this good stuff or bad stuff or whatever?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. This is my favorite network, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on the show. It's true. Actually, in my book, I say I was 5 years old, but I sort of got an awakening and a confirmation from my mother the other day when I said, how old was I when? And then I, described a certain place I was living and everything. And she said I was like 2.5 years old. So my first memories somewhere in the vicinity of 3 years of age, maybe 5. But obviously, I was very young, and I pretty much would just have visitations every night. And usually I can talk for 2 hours on this. So, I mean, this is the most condensed. But, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't understand it. It's just, it was sort of just going with the flow, trying to understand and just telling my mom. And I knew they were coming and all sorts of stuff, which I actually have 3 different types of beings that I guess I've been coming in contact with. And I believe that the ones that probably were coming when I was very young were, for the most part, probably what people call, and I hate using the terms, but you have to try to describe it, called the shorter grays or something. But honestly, I think, they were all working together because, and I'm certain of that as I was a teenager, and then I had my physical abduction, and the whole time I want to say this because there has been times I've seen it, I've talked to people, and a lot of people think that anybody that talks about extraterrestrials, specifically experiencers, were almost some people that were really into this their whole lives or something. And I was not. I was very sheltered as a child. My mom was very sheltering. And, I didn't have any kind of experience. I didn't even watch certain movies, just everything. And so a couple of ghost stories here and there, and that was the big deal, So none of this was anything that I ever thought of. I just sort of, one day when I was, 16 years old, and boom, it's sort of like everything sort of just settled in to my, after I was 8 years old, it just settled into the boring, normal life, if you want to call it, of just growing up and, making mistakes and doing all the things we always do as kids. And then I just, I had to make a long story short, a mass UFO sighting in town. My father lived in the prominent neighborhood. I was living there. There was witnesses, but I can't get anybody to come forward. But the city mayor was the neighbor, and my dad's best friend, and everybody in that, we lived on the Circle block, and it was prominent neighborhood. And everybody saw it from a distance. My sister, everybody, and there was confirmation, but I was I don't know how many miles away, and I was directly under it, and so it was a multiple witness abduction, and it's this crazy. How do you ever prove anything when you can't? There was no. This was in I was born in 1969. So around in 1970, 72 is when the visitation started, but everything kind of halted. And then in 1985, 1986, that major event happened. So of course there was no cell phones. People didn't just carry cameras for no reason. And I was absolutely, I did not think of the paranormal whatsoever. I was a teenage girl and, kind of boy crazy. In other words, I didn't care about anything else, right? So, that was the farthest thing from my mind. But, I mean, it was interesting because, it's almost like one day you just wake up and smell the coffee, just have something that happens and changes your entire life. And I want to say the experiencers are... We should actually change the word experiencers, contact you, anybody wants to call it, and say witnesses. Because when you have a serious thing happen like this, and I mean a physical abduction, I can't say for other people who have astral, visits and things, but a physical abduction.
You say, Erica, you say physical abduction. Yes. Where were you taken up? I mean, were you in your house? You float out the window? Were you in your car, stopped on the highway, or how did it all come about?
Okay. Yeah, my friends and we were driving. I was in the back seat, and doing our thing, and we were listening to music, and we were, all of us girls, we were enjoying ourselves, singing to the music. I look over, and I'm condensing this, but I look over and I think Madonna was playing or something, back in the 80s. And
mine would have been Chuck Berry or something. That's
this was in the Midwest too. So, I wasn't even noticing where we were at the time, but we were in the back roads and God knows where, in small town, Iowa, back roads. And it was the late summer, and it was probably around 7:00. And I remember you could still see all the colors, of everything, but the sun was just kind of had that moment where it was, okay, it's going to start setting and everything. And I kept thinking, while I'm singing, well, that's kind of weird, like an airplane. I've never noticed an airplane. My mind's trying to make sense of it quickly. Airplane is keeping pace with a car, but only really far off in the distance, but yet I thought that was, my brain's going, God, that's just weird. And I was about ready to say something to my friends, like, isn't that weird? Like, I just knew something was off, but I didn't, because all of a sudden the radio just started going staticky, and that's what we were listening to. And we were all like, oh man, it's ruined the song, And the next thing you know, the car just put, and it stalls. And we're just like, what? So we just look, and we're like, oh my God, where are we? And like, what in the crap are we going to do? So I'm sweeping, around the location, and I see, typical Iowa is like to the left and ahead is cornfield. And that's how I also know the time that it was, as far as the season and all that, the month, because, knee high.
So was there a ship that was visible?
Yeah. So basically, off in the distance, I'm glad you're helping me keep going, because I want to tell people that even right now, and this happens all the time, when I start talking about it, I start getting into that, I want to say post-traumatic stress, but there's something that takes over, and it feels like it's happening again. It's you just can't get away from that. It becomes again. But yes, there was a craft hovering above the tree line, and instant feeling of this, I want to say panic. There's not even a word. I wish, that was an easy way to say it. It was so much something of, we just knew they were watching us. It was probably, and I want to describe the ship as like the size of a house, just your average 2-story kind of, and it was about 500, no more than 500 feet away. So,
and you went on board.
Yes.
And how did you get there? Did you?
Well, basically, I'll cut to the chase on that. There was some kind of feeling in the air, and I felt like we were going to. It was all a hypnotizing kind of feeling. I'm trying to condense it, and I basically felt compelled to get out of the car, and I did, and I walked.
Did you get out by yourself, or did your friends go with you?
My friends did not want me to get out, but at the same time, that's when I want to say I don't care about them. That's really rude. But at the time, you don't care. You're going on automatic, and it overtakes you. So I did not. I know they were on board at one point, but I just remember being alone at this point. Like basically went first, and I went underneath it, and it was above the tall trees. So I don't know how tall a very tall tree is, but I remember like looking up, and I was just so worried that it was going to fall on me, honestly, because the whole thing is just.
Now it was hovering. It was hovering there, or was it resting on some sort of?
It was hovering. It was hovering silently. It was streamlined. It had. If anybody wants to go to my Facebook page, you can see the illustrations that I did my best to do. I'm not a great artist, but that's at facebook.com/Erica Getsch, ERICAGOETSEH, and I have it public so anybody can just see that album, but. Multicolored lights, and it was rotating counterclockwise, and the lights were doing a little sequence dance, and that kind of made this, everybody have this weird feeling, and maybe hypnotizing, if you want to call it. So anyways, there was a whole bunch of this white, almost a dense fog thing that was happening. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It was white, and I don't know if it was light.
So let's get on board the ship. You're inside the craft, and there are people there, or there are beings there.
There are little tiny beings, and they look similar to the small grays. They were probably about 3 foot tall, but the funny thing is they did not look like what we see on the internet. Now, the eyes were not huge like that. They were small, but yet these beings moved really fast. That was one thing that just, oh my God. I don't know if I was in a time warp kind of thing. I was sick. I was sick from being, whatever, up there. I had a sickness about me, and so I'm not sure if I was completely, fully coherent about what I saw when they moved quick. They moved lightning fast, and it was hard to get a really good fix on. But when I did, I could tell that they just kind of look like children, but yet not really. So
you didn't get the feeling that they were holograms or something along. To you, they were physical beings. They were right there.
No, they were absolutely totally physical. Yeah.
Did you touch them at any time, or?
Well, they touched me, but what I noticed right away is it's just like I knew, and that's the thing. Communication wise, I just knew that they wanted me to get on the table, this table thing, and I don't know how I knew. I just knew it, and I basically didn't really have any other choice. I couldn't leave. It was one of those, just do it. I don't know. And so they, kind of strapped me in, and so, they had to physically, touch me. I don't exactly remember, holding hands or anything. So, but, it was physical. And so all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, they just disappeared. and left me in this weird situation where I was actually scared. And I'll be honest, I was hoping they'd come back because I was fearing, I knew something was going to happen that was bad, like to me. Now, when I say my experience is good or most positive, that doesn't mean that things don't, frighten people, right? I mean, in hindsight, we have to absorb our experience and try to understand it. But that's when the blue reptilian or reptilian/hybrid, however, anything, it still has reptilian in there. That's when they came in, and there was 2 of them, and basically they were pretty much, for the most part, a cobalt blue. I guess that's a good way to describe, kind of a light cobalt blue. And I know you're going to ask me about the scales and the thing is, I want to say they did not have the kind of scale. Okay, the reason that I say reptilian, I've gotten a lot of quote unquote experts to give me the feedback on this, and this is how I come to the reptilian conclusion. Their irises or pupils, I don't know which one, they were elongated, and so there was some features like that sort of just kind of give way to reptilian features. But the scales were not the kind of scales that people talk about all the time, sort of like snake skin or something, or alligator. It was as though, I want to say, underneath the surface of their meat suit, I you know what I mean? Whatever the skin that was covering, you could see a texture, almost like if you had something and then like you had your arm underneath and then put a latex or a balloon that stretched over it, so you could still see what was under there, but yet there was still something covering. So
no, was it this blue color, their skin?
Yes, it was. Yes. I made a joke and said meat suit because I don't know. I don't know what that, you know what I mean? I'm assuming we could call it skin. And it just,
how about hide?
Huh?
Hide,
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it just, but see, the thing is, it had an oily texture to it. So,
most reptilians do. I mean, okay, now, you say you classify them as reptilians. Why would you do that? I mean, and how have you ever handled real reptilians? I mean, and noticed any similarity or?
Well, I have talked to a lot of, through the course of, the last 6 years, I've talked to a lot of reptilian contactees and some experts and who just got, testimony and everything. And it's more than likely that it's a hybrid reptilian, maybe reptilian human. And once I saw my hybrid later, I realized that that there's a good chance that it is because of,
Well, did they talk to you while they had you there?
Well, and that's the thing. There was communication, and I don't call it talking because obviously there's no the mouth features don't open up. You just know it. You just it's impressions. It's they impress upon you, and you know instantly what it is. So it's actually, it's just the same as having words used, only there isn't an actual word as much as it's the word. Like, as soon as you read the word, say love, boom, you know what love is. You know what I mean? Like all that. It's sort of just knowing and the whole thing. So I was scared. I was really scared because there was confusion and things. And they basically, calmed me down by touching my forehead, and it just this kind of calming euphoria came over me. And there was a lot of things, like they were doing something to fix me. And I say fix, and I didn't know there was anything wrong, but they were taking care of me like family, like a mother to a child. I started to get this feeling of this caring feeling, and who said that at the beginning of the show? Somebody said, or maybe they just were treating her nice, which actually makes good sense. I mean, maybe they would be being nice to me specifically because I found out later that this was not my first time on. So I had been, because I am part of the hybrid, program. And so I had been on there before. Mm-hmm. So, I mean.
Now, what is the hybrid program?
Well, I at one point went to see my hybrid, which I found out she was female. I sensed it. I didn't know she was mine. And see, what happens is you get kind of an amnesia thing for a while, like you sort of get disorientated, and then it takes you a little bit of time. And then when you start to connect the dots and things just get, then they tell you, impress upon you that you've been, for me, that I've been working with them my whole life. And it takes me a while to sort of connect back to what happens.
Can you call them down? I mean, do they know that you're on the show, for example, tonight?
Well, they're always. I know we have to take a break in a minute. They're always monitoring. I believe that all extraterrestrials, or all whatever you want to call entities, are monitoring their pets, their subjects, their family. I don't know what they, people want to call. So yes, I'm sure that there's a good chance that they could be aware of this.
Well, they're welcome to call in.
Well, I have actually gotten some responses when I do call out to them. And I mean, I will not say, there's a good friend of mine who actually was witness to it. And this person, I won't say the name because I don't have permission. And I don't like to do that. But it is a person that is a very, very, very well-known ancient aliens person, blah, 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 right? Very well-known author, friend, and all that. And I actually had, this person's actually aware of several times that.
All right. Well, yeah. Erica, we'll continue this when we come back from our break.
Well, we're going to find out about the Illuminati and the reptilians.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back.
Sorry, I got out of control for just a minute. I saw Erica and I couldn't resist.
Well, here we are back, Tim, in the second hour of Exploring the Bizarre. And, we want to bring Lynn back into the conversation. But, Erica, during our break, there was something that you wanted to say, but you wanted to wait till we got back onto the air. So why don't you go ahead and say that, and then we'll bring Lynn back into us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Because, it's like I forget about this. And it's very important because everything's not only still a mystery, but I want to mention this. When I was basically in what I consider the abduction / intake room, exam room, it was really strange because the blues, as I call them, they were around, but during the course of their exam and various things that was happening to me, I could see this holographic kind of image of a very, very tall, and maybe even a 15-foot tall, I believe, what looked like a tall gray.
Mhm.
And it only lasted for a few seconds, and then it would sort of go away and then come back moments or minutes later during the course of this. So I found that really interesting because I don't know that the blues ever, I believe, and my intuition and everything else, the way that I observed, obviously the very tall holographic was monitoring, overseeing, maybe even supervising, but the blues did not seem like they were aware of the tall grays. So I don't know what kind of, relationship, if there was, and I don't know if I'm also being monitored or have any kind of contact with the tall, or if they're all working together. In other words, and this all sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Hey, Erica, where are you talking to us from? Where do you reside?
I'm in Iowa.
Iowa. Oh, my friend Diane Tessman lives there too. Are you familiar with Tom Dongo at all? Do you know who he is? He's out there in Sedona. We've had him on the program a few times. He has a photograph. I don't know how we do. Well, he calls it the Blue Man. Now, when the photograph was taken, there was nobody could see this person. It was, he was like invisible if he was actually there. But when the photograph was developed, lo and behold, here is somebody very, very kind of strange looking with blue tinted skin. And apparently quite a few people around the Sedona area had either taken photographs or had some sort of contact with this sort of individual. Have you communicated with other experiencers who have had the same type of experiences, maybe with the same group?
No, it's funny because mine seems to be such a isolated or unique kind of group. Really, I don't know anybody that's really. I wish I've been, in a way, I want to find somebody that would, be able to say that they have. But I want to mention also that I did see some human looking, and I don't know how human, but the human looking individuals, if you want to call them, at one point on the mothership, I guess we call it mothership. When I was actually walking, taking a walk, and that's when I went to see my hybrid. So, there's a lot of people involved, and I hope
sounds
that
like the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Same idea. They had some humans in that experience as well.
Well, as soon as I looked down, Len, and saw, because I looked at an overhang, as soon as I saw that there was humans of sorts, there was like this courtyard that was really far down, and I could see a bunch of different, beings. I call them beings, and then I was shocked when I saw human, or what I thought to be humans. And as soon as I did, it's, of course, the blues absolutely must have known, telepathically, I assume, and they hurried me along, they just knew. I was like shocked. I was just shocked. So, I do have also some MyLab possible background that happened to me when I was younger. So. Do you see, it could really tie in. I mean, obviously, again, there's no proof. So,
What transpired on that? What transpired between you and them in that experience? What took place? Were you examined or what?
With the beings on the ship?
Yeah.
Well, basically, the initial exam took place on a small ship, and then of course I didn't realize until in hindsight later we must have docked to the bigger one, because obviously when you see 100-foot or whatever it is, like the size of a house, when you see something like that, and then it suddenly turns into this huge mammoth size, you can't even see the ceiling size ship. How does this all take place, right? So it must have been when we docked. And I actually have a diagram on my Facebook that sort of describes my understanding of the ship when I was walking and stuff. So, it helps to show that to give an indication. But there's a lot of learning that takes place. There's the hybrid program. They want you to reconnect with your hybrid to sort of, maybe they check things, experiments. I don't know, and I've been working with them. I've been working, and they impressed upon me after I saw my hybrid that I've been working with them my whole life. And I have this equation, and I have a person that's supposed to help me unlock it. And hate to say, ladies listening, it's a male, and I believe that, and I'm certain that it's a male, a human male. And it's there's a lot of questions. I have only.
Was it your understanding that the hybrid was your child?
Yeah. Yeah, she was. I didn't know this, but as I bonded with her, and started to look at her features. Now, what she looked like, and quickly state, is she looked like if you took a blue, and the features of the blue had hairless, about 7 foot tall, sharp teeth, somewhat of a nose, but nothing so prominent, But what was prominent is the forehead was, like the Cro-Magnon Neanderthal kind of bump on the above the eyebrows.
Of the eyebrow, yeah.
Like the bony ridge above the eyebrows.
The bony ridge,
it was very pronounced.
Huh.
And there was some ears, I think, but more like a hole. You know what I mean? It wasn't really. And and the teeth were really, really sharp. But they didn't need to use their mouth to talk. I didn't notice mouth movements as though talking or anything. That was not a factor. But otherwise, they had almost like a human that would sort of bodybuild, just kind of look like that. And I didn't see any prominent genitals. But I could sense the female came in after the male. The male did have a vest on of sorts. I could see the weave on it. It was a certain loose weaved. I don't know how to describe it real quick. And anyway, so I could see and sense, and that's the one thing. My senses were heightened when I was on there. I just it was a lot easier, or maybe it was telepathic senses kicking in as well. All I know is,
So now, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
Well, I was just going to ask Len, with his research, have you run across cases of supposed hybridization between the reptilians and humans? To me, that would seem to be extremely difficult with really two completely different kinds of species.
Well, they know how to. They are master geneticists. The reptilians are master geneticists. They've been doing it for thousands of years. It wasn't so much a crossbreed between a direct reptilian and a human, more like a gray and a human, because the grays themselves were crossbreeds between the reptilians from Draco and the entities from Sirius, because the small grays are really a crossbreed themselves.
Mm-hmm. So
they're a second generation. You might say that the hybrids were really a second generation hybrid.
So they're mutts.
More, they're mutts, right?
Yeah.
I was on a panel discussion one time with Bud Hopkins. I think in where the heck were we? Minneapolis, maybe, or maybe it was Minneapolis. GC Shellhorn had put together a meeting, a conference, and there were two with the panel along with Bud Hopkins and myself. There were two ladies who got up there and told us about how they were having sex with the reptilians, and I thought it not kind of peculiar, but I didn't see how such mating would be possible.
It's not really mating so much as it all happens in a laboratory. It's all a matter of a Petri dish is where it takes place. It's mixing the DNA in a laboratory environment.
Romantic.
It's not so much the copulation, although that takes place too. But
Well, Erica, I mean, if you're talking about, a hybridization, are you referring to, like the blue reptilians and humans, or, was that the case with you? I mean, was there a physical interaction that you know of?
Well, definitely was when I met my daughter, if you want to call her. She looked like she had all the features of the blue, but only with Caucasian skin, and her eyes were like glass, just clear, just like theirs, with the elongated pupils. But I just want to say real quick, David Icke, he does what he does well, but I think that he has sort of perpetuated this negative stereotype on extraterrestrials, specifically reptilians, by sort of making people put a blame game. It stops human progression, and this is the message. My beings gave me a message to basically convey that humans need to get beyond the fear to be able to experience the love. And they didn't say their love. They said the love. And when they said, it was impressed as the love. And that's the thing about telepathy or whatever was the communication between us. That's the way I received it. I wish I knew. Exactly. But I think the love means love, the love. I think, and that's the thing. We have to take responsibility as humans for what we're doing. We can't blame and say, well, I killed so-and-so because this bad reptilian told me to. No, please. That is just blaming, and we have to, get beyond that. And the thing is, we can't take a few words from a few people like Swerdlow and Ike and etc. What's his name? Alex Collier. Now, all of them, they have their own experiences. I am not discounting that, but we can't hold that to say that they have the gospel.
Well, did you experience any affection or love coming from these entities?
Absolutely.
Well, then you weren't dealing with reptilians, because the reptilians don't even have a heart chakra. They don't even know how to.
How do you know? How would you know that? Because you never met one, did you?
Because all the reports agree.
The reports from just a few people
not a few, really. No, more than a few.
How many? About how many? Just because I've been talking to people for 6 years now.
They've committed countless atrocities.
Yeah, I know. And what you're talking about is draconians, and you're talking about one small or large race, one small fraction, shall I say, of reptilians. If do you see what I mean though? Like KKK, most obviously they're white, but they commit murders, so all white people are doing it. You know what I mean? That's unfair. It's unfair. That's what I'm saying. Yes, you are talking. There are some, and I don't discount that there are, but there are not what you guys are saying. I'm not trying to stand up for the bad guys. I'm standing up for the good guys, the ones that say, you know what I'm saying? The ones that people are like, well, you know what? Here's the deal. If we were on another planet and we had to survive, you guys, right? I mean, this is like do or die. So we have to go, and if the only food source was because we need meat, because we're humans, we had to, basically eat so-and-so from planet X, right? They had to, well, don't you think that those people or whoever, entities from planet X would call us, we're horrible. We're horrible. But isn't it relative to our intentions? We are only trying to survive.
Well, I don't know. If somebody makes a deal with Hitler, they cannot have good intentions. I wouldn't say. Yeah, but what I want to ask Lynn though is we hear all these stories from David Icke and others about the Queen being a reptilian, and some of our world leaders are actually shapeshifters. Do you take any stock in that?
I can't verify anything that Ike talks about in terms of the royal family. I have no idea. He's much better positioned to know that than I am. it wouldn't surprise me because I do know that they do shapeshift and they're very adapted. They've adapted that to their advantage. It's basically a form of mental control, the shapeshifting. They get a hold of your mind and make you think that you're seeing what you're seeing. It's not so much the actual shape shifting itself. They're experts at mind control. It's very complicated, but if you detected any affection, anything like real affection from these entities, I would have to say they're not really reptilian. Although I've heard other people say there are some good reptilians. But then again, you take James Bartley, who says the only good reptilian is a dead reptilian. So you have both sides of this.
But don't we have racism here? Some people say they're
not the same. They don't have the same kind of body or technology or makeup as humans do. They're a different race entirely. They're not like us.
And I doubt that there's going to be so much intention to hurt. You see what I mean? Maybe it's just called survival, right? And would that be?
Well, I don't know. Blowing up a planet. I don't know if that's exactly survival.
Exactly.
Well, hey, look at humans aren't doing that great, right? I mean, we're ruined.
You got a point. You got a point there, Erica.
Gotcha.
No doubt. No doubt about that.
I mean,
now, how
does that lens wrong? I'm just saying. Open your mind.
I
take a neutral ground here.
Well, maybe as Eric is saying, I mean, we're dealing with different, species or subspecies or, along those lines. Because if the universe is as big as it
really
is,
define a reptilian? I mean, we seem to have perhaps a disagreement in terminology here. I mean, reptilian, they're cold-blooded. I mean, how do you?
They are cold-blooded. Yes, they are cold-blooded.
Yeah. I mean, is that the only thing we have to go on? I mean,
the eyes. We have are elongated.
We have terms like draconian, meaning sinister. All these things are derived from experiences with the reptilians. Cold-blooded, draconian.
That's the thing. I know we have to take a break, but I'm just saying that something that I'm saying in my experience has hit home, and this is the reason why I know. I have been approached, and I have heard through the grapevines that people approach me saying that there is a person in government, and I don't want to go too deep into this because I haven't ever really said this publicly, that this politician, okay, literally a politician, has been at prominent UFO meetings. I'm trying to keep this real vague, and actually tried to contract people to get my propulsion information that I know. Okay, and this is not a joke.
Why don't they just contact you directly?
Well.
You seem to be you seem to be fairly accessible. I mean,
well, then those people have actually contacted me. I will not give out the. There's some things you just. I'm sorry. We're talking. There's been some money talked about when they discussed it with me. You know what I'm saying now?
Is it a large sum of money?
Oh yeah, God. I mean, I don't want to say it on air. But
never deal with politicians. Period. That's what I say.
The whole thing is that there has been.
Or you might find yourself in the White House.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is there's something that resonates true that the government knows that I know. Let's put it that way. And I don't want to be like, oh, look at me. I'm just saying, there's some stuff going down. So my story has validity, even when I didn't, care or just when I was just talking about it. I come to find this later down the line that people have been trying to get contracts or whatever you call it to get the information. And there's things that I know that I don't discuss publicly because there's still an equation there to be, discovered. I know what the equation is to a certain degree, but I need help in unlocking a lot.
So they showed you the propulsion system on the craft?
No comment.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah, you know what? I know a lot. See, and that's the thing about experiencers, especially contactees. We know a lot more.
Yeah, but they could show you anything unless you could build a craft and it takes off the ground. I mean, we've heard of many cases where all kinds of things have been shown to contactees and the experiencers, and it's kind of optional whether it how much truth there is to it. But we'll find out the truth about all of this when we come back in just a few minutes. So stay tuned. Grab yourself a hot cup of coffee or a beer and rejoin us in just a few minutes to talk about reptilians.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. And Tim, can you believe it? Here we are already at the last segment of the program. And you can always tell when we've got an excellent show, because the time just goes by so fast. So, Lynn, wanted to ask you now, is there any relationship between the Illuminatis and reptilians in history?
Absolutely. The reptilians, basically the Illuminati do the dirty work of the reptilians in this dimension, because the reptilians themselves are really fourth dimensional creatures. They really inhabit the lower astral, what we call the lower astral realm, which is the fourth dimension, or the dimension where the people from Earth go when they die. So they have that advantage over us immediately. And for them to manifest in the third dimension takes a lot of energy. And they prefer not to manifest that energy. So the Illuminati, really, they control everything on this planet. They control the banks, the media, as you know, Hollywood, everything. And the secret societies, all of that, yes. And David Icke explored that subject in great detail. Yes, so they are their servants. They made a pact with them, and the Illuminati all have a high percentage of reptilian blood. The reason they call them the Blue Bloods, the royalty of Europe, was because they have a high copper content to their blood. The reptilians do, and it gave it a bluish tint. But basically, that's why the Illuminati themselves are capable of shapeshifting, in addition to the reptilians themselves. And of course, they've been running everything.
Mm-hmm. But again, we're not talking about physical shapeshifting. It's a form of mind control.
It is, exactly. Mm-hmm. But there is a physical dimension to it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Now, what about, we've heard a lot of stories over the years, about these deep underground bases, run by the military, especially out west, like in Dulce. And one of the persistent stories is that, these are cooperations with alien species. And I know in Dulce, there was a stories that at, some of the deeper levels, the reptilians were the ones in control.
Absolutely, especially at Dulce. And Dulce, the reason the reptilians were involved in Dulce is because that particular underground installation, which we call a dumb base, deep underground military base, because it tied into an ancient cavern system that the reptilians had explored hundreds of thousands of years previously. That's why it was located there. They really have an underground empire throughout the planet, and some of the dumb bases tie in with their underground empire. Tremendous amount of things going on there. It's really not in the core of the Earth. It's really in the crust. The crust in some cases goes 200 miles deep, and some of the reptilian colonies are that deep down. But are you familiar with the Phil Schneider story? Do you know all about the Phil?
Oh, definitely. I was one of the first ones, I think, to actually write about Phil after his and I'll put this in quotation marks, suicides. He was suicided, yes, and I talked to his wife, and she sent me a lot of like his death records and reports from the sheriff and the coroner and things like that. So yeah, I'm very, very familiar with Mr. Schneider.
Well, you know that what he said before he died. He said, if I die, he said, it will not be suicide. He said, for certain, it will not be suicide. So he knew he was going to be. He was going to be.
May
killed.
I interject, please?
Go ahead, please.
I loved Phil Schneider. I mean, like, he was so brave. And as much as I talk about positive reptilian contact or ET, I just try not to a lot of times say reptilian because, you know what I mean? It just, let's just go with a positive. But the thing is, there are some really horrible beings, human and extraterrestrial or interdimensional, and that whole thing about the dumbs, the dulce and everything, it's absolutely disgusting, and I feel it's an awful thing. So I'm not condoning bad behavior in any being, and I just want to make that a point that Phil was absolutely, he was one of the bravest people, and I just...
He really was. He really was. You know, he said at one point in one of his lectures that over 1 million adults and 100,000 children disappear each year. Now, where are they going? Where are they being taken? You do know that the reptilians do eat human flesh. You're familiar. You're aware of that, I hope, Erica.
Yes, and I actually had... You guys are really going to hate me now. I really had a moment, and in my book I said this, but that I was examining and cutting and eating my baby doll when I was around 5. I remember that.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I certainly don't talk about it much, and it's the first time on the air. But yes, it's so... You never know, some of the screen memories and the false feelings that you could get from, for example, if the reptilian if the blue, if they were, you know what I mean, giving me this fake love feeling, right? So
they're very good at implanting screen
I
memories.
totally understand.
Yeah, they do.
Yes, but what I have to say is we have to also look into not blaming. You know what I mean? If we don't start taking our own responsibility and just, you know what I mean? That is where I'm at with this. This is as I evolved in this. And so I want to just say finally that my tagline that I kind of use is, more like beyond, instead of like my book was Beyond the Fear, the ET equation. But I like to say Beyond the Fear is human revolution, but I say R-evolution. Beyond the Fear is human revolution. So,
well, Erica, I got to ask, what in God's name do they want?
Well,
they don't really want anything. They already control the human race. They now control the human race entirely. They control us through money, through debt, enslavement. They're farming us just like in the movie.
Now, there's the classic "they," though. Quotation marks, they, Len. Now, see, that's the funny part, because it's what do they want versus like what do my beings, what have they impressed upon me? And that was that humans have to join the galaxy in the big family sense and get our shit together.
Why are they creating the hybrids? Why are they creating the hybrids? What do they tell you about that?
They haven't told me anything.
Why do you think they're creating hybrids? What's your take on that?
I never even really looked. I never really thought about it. I mean, there's so many reasons why. I suppose. I mean, why are we creating what we're doing here with, right? I mean, look at some of the stuff we're doing. Why do we? How
many of you have seen that Steven Spielberg TV series called Taken about 10 years ago?
Oh yeah.
So you know about that, Taken?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
The whole story was that the hybrid, if it looked human enough, they would let it pass in human society. But if it didn't, they would take it back up into their spaceships and underground because they knew it wouldn't be able to pass. But their goal is to create a hybrid race that can live among us and eventually take over the planet.
No, see, that's putting a negative spin on it again, Len. Now, check this out. Now, there's no confirmation on that because just like, I mean, you're just taking it from all these movies and these, I mean, why don't we just pull in the rabbit out of our hat, right? And just say that it's fact. I mean, the thing is, it's more than likely that it's also to assimilate and for communication reasons. Why are we making what we're making? Everything has to do with survival, and we have to look at the big picture. And I think that I want to say respectfully that I don't think, for example, people like you maybe, and I'm saying this respectfully, may not be looking at the big picture. You're looking at the us against them. Let's close the door on this whole kit and caboodle. I'm not saying I condone bad behavior. I'm talking about, I just feel like you might be just shutting the door on all.
Well, just answer me this. What motivation does the human race have to creating reptilian human hybrids? Why would we want to do that? What would our motive be?
Well, for one,
theirs is very clear. They can use that means of taking over the planet. Why would we do it? Why would we do it?
Well, we could do it, for example, if we wanted to. We could do it so that there would be a liaison.
We don't have the genetic ability. We don't have the genetic ability to do it. The human race genetically, we can't do that yet.
We can't?
No, we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Len, I didn't know you were in the laboratory at the secret bases. You don't know what they're doing, do you? I'm sorry, Len. Come on. You don't know what they're doing. You can't say, you're saying it with your absolute expert voice. It's not true. But how do you know that? You are not there. Nobody can. What you're telling that Phil, like back in the day when Phil Schneider was talking about stuff, people just, a lot of time, that's not true. Well, he was there. So he would be more the expert. You're just hearing things from the grapevine. I'm sorry.
It's more than that.
Of course, and then you have Daryl Sims, who says that the actual aliens we never see, that the reptilians, the greys, the insectoid types of creatures are nothing more than genetic manipulations by the actual unseeable, unknowable aliens who have to use DNA from here on the planet as their representations, basically, because they can't really come here. They have to use avatars, basically.
Well, see, that's the thing. Look, you can look at that. Like, what he says may be fact from what he knows or thinks, but you can't lump it into every single thing, because that could be a group that, yes, that's true. But that doesn't mean every single. Why are we saying, you know what I mean? Like, it's every single being, like the big lump theory of the Holy Grail, the Bible. You know what I mean? We have to open our minds, and that's what it's all about. Open your mind and say, wait a minute, fractions of beings are doing various things for various reasons. Why does there have to be the big lump? Right? It's a stereotype.
Yeah,
and it puts us in a mindset of where we don't progress.
Well, you're absolutely right, though, because the human beings do have a tendency to, it's either black or white. There's no in between. You're either for me or against me, or you're left wing or you're right wing, and never the twain shall meet.
If we have racial problems as we do among the humans on this planet, how would we feel about reptilians on this planet? Can we live peacefully in a reptilian and human society? I don't think so.
And there's the negative again. Len.
Okay, all right. Hey.
Well, because you got to go back through the history, Erica. You got to go back through the history.
Hey, but I can see there's a difference here, because you're going by, like what you've read, Len, and what other people have told you, and Erica is going by what she has experienced. So I don't know.
No,
there's no right. There's no right or wrong here. I mean, if she says that she's experienced these things and she's really experienced them, then the reptilians, if they are reptilians indeed, that she's encountered, don't seem like there is negative. Frankly, I wouldn't want to spend the evening with any of them. It doesn't sound like. I don't know. I mean, to me it leaves a bad a taste in my mouth. I mean, so to speak. I don't. If you say they've taken over the world and they're in control, I don't know. This stuff has been going. The world has been at crisis for the last God knows how many millennia, and people want to blame it on something. Richard Shaver had his Dero. I mean, it's the same basic story. It's just a different character development here. I mean, we want to blame it on some if we do something wrong, we want to blame it on some outside force. I don't know. Where does our own responsibility, start, and where does it stop? That we've got to blame everything on the reptilians or on the Dero or on Satan.
Well.
I mean, Satan. The Christians want to blame everything on Satan.
But you do agree, Tim, don't you, that the aliens do control the banks and the media?
Oh no, I have no idea. I think.
The
bunch of
Illuminati.
How would I know that aliens control the banks? When I go into the bank to do my transactions, I see a nice friendly teller behind the window. I don't know how could I tell you that I don't like banks in particular. I've been screwed by them a couple of times, but I don't know if I would blame that on reptilians.
What about the post office, Tim?
Post office is another matter.
Yeah, I would think that the post office may be run by aliens the way they act sometimes, and I know they're in Manhattan.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know who's controlling anything. I'm afraid to open my microwave now because somebody thinks that you can see what's going on in your apartment through the microwave, and now they tell me that if you've got earphones on. They can, know what you're listening to. I don't know. The whole world is screwed up, if you ask me. And I don't know if you could blame it on anybody else. To be honest with you, I'd have to see a lot more proof, to be honest with you. And I don't see any proof, actually. I mean, I hear a lot of stories and a lot of conjecture there. But I don't, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It's fascinating. We have a good discussion, but Where's the elephant in the room or the serpent in the room? I don't know.
How about the fact that 50% of the human race lives below poverty?
Yeah, but what does that have to do with what does that have to do with what you want to blame that on? Reptilians?
Look, the reptilians ate my homework. That's why I didn't get good.
I think you could blame it on the Illuminati, couldn't you? Couldn't you blame it on the Illuminati?
I don't know. The Illuminati seems so vague. Anybody you don't that you don't agree with, you put them. Kissinger's in the Illuminati. I mean, the Rothschilds are in the Illuminati. I don't know who's in the Illuminati. Yeah, I think it's if there is such a thing as the Illuminati, I think it's a very loosely knit group. Let's blame it on the Bilderbergers today. I don't know.
Skull and Bones.
We can blame anything that we want. But hey, we're running short here of time, and I do want to go around the table one more time so that each of you can tell our listeners where they can get in touch with you and what you have to offer. So, Lynn, why don't we start with you? You've got a couple of books that are that you've written in the past. What are they?
Yeah, my first book was Secret History of Extraterrestrials, which came out in 2010. The second one was Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, and then my new book is...
Now, Planet Serpo is pretty interesting. Isn't that the supposedly the last scene of the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie?
Yes, it is. Spielberg had the whole story, absolutely.
Now, are they reptilians?
No, not at all. In fact, when Erica talked about them, they sounded more like the more like the Ebens than the Greys, the way she was describing them.
Yeah, but I think they would have told her that.
At Roswell. The ones that crashed at Roswell were not Greys. They were Ebens.
I think they were. I don't know. I don't even believe in the. To me, the Roswell thing is a lot of conjecture. I think it was probably something to do with all these devices. You know, they brought all these German scientists over after the war, kind of snuck them in the into the country, and they were developing this stuff. And a lot of what went on, was a cover up by the government because they didn't want anybody to know that they were in cooperating with these Nazi scientists. So Roswell, to me, I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't say that it was a spaceship. I mean, you can believe what you want, but I don't see any real evidence of it. It was something that crashed in the desert. God only knows what it was. And I think that a lot of the people that were in the military would rather have you think that it was an extraterrestrial than have to admit, hey, we were involved with the Nazis in those days and bringing them over and making them citizens and all that. That's my take on it. I mean,
yeah. Well, anyway, that was my second book, and this is my new book. This one just came out February 25th, so it's relatively new. By the way, the Serpo book has been doing very well.
Yes.
Yeah, it has been, and because we did send 12 Americans to a distant planet in 1965. It's a fantastic story.
And have they come back?
Well, 7 did. Five did not.
And the 7 that came back, are they still here, alive?
No, the last one died in 2002 in Florida. Oh. But because they absorbed a lot of radiation on Serpo.
Did you ever talk to any of these 7 that came back?
I did not. No, I did not. But who did was let's see. Bob Dean knows a lot about this subject.
Yeah.
And Whitley Strieber.
Oh yes.
Met one of them at a conference.
Oh,
at
okay.
a UFO conference. Yes, he talks about that.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay, so and your next project, anything coming up?
Not yet. I don't have anything mapped out yet. No, I do not.
Well, just keep fighting the reptilians.
Yeah.
Len, do you have a website that people can go to find out more about you?
I do, but it's still under construction. I scrapped the old one. I have a new one now. It's called et-secrethistory.net. And it's the basic structure is out there, but I'm adding to it all the time. And it's a beginning anyway.
Work in progress.
Work in progress, exactly.
And Erica, I know people can find you all over the universe, but give us a little detail, your book titles and...
Well, I actually retired my book title because I gave away 200 copies for free. So if anybody ever tries to say that I'm trying to give my experience for money, that's wrong. I gave it away because the message was more important than the money. So I just want to say that. But you can find me at facebook.com/Erica Getch. And, but I want to say this real quick is, it's nice to hear both sides, but I think that we have to take a look. I don't think I know. We have to take a look at, do we want to evolve or not? And the bottom line is we have to evolve. And how do you better yourself? You better yourself, right? We can't control other beings, other people. We can only control what we do and how we react and how we treat others. And that's where we have to start, to be responsible for ourselves and then let it spread out. So the love is to let the love spread out, love energy, I want to say. And that's very important, that we have to keep that, because right now you can see all across the media, you guys know, I don't have to tell you, it can get crazy on Facebook and politics and everything. You got to keep that.
It's a crazy universe out there, with or without the reptilians. But speaking of reptilians, I do want to remind people about our book on the subject, Reality of the Serpent Race and the Subterranean Origin of UFOs by Commander X and Branton. And we have a really long, very interesting interview with Credo Matwa, who is it's an excellent book.
David Icke has a lot to say about Credo.
Oh, absolutely. Tim, upward and onward, and get up to the controls of the ship, and let's fight to the finish. Right?
And off we go. That's right.
Reptilians. All right, good night, everybody, and look up at the sky and beware, or look up with love.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.